which coincidentally are also the Secret Service code names for Trump, Elon, and Don Jr. We get news of yet another inexplicable, chaotic move seemingly bent on undermining everything we as Americans hold dear. Now, naturally, the federal workers in their path of wanton destruction are experiencing anger, chaos, and confusion. Rehiring people on Tuesday that you fired on Friday does not scream government efficiency.
Last week, I watched as Trump proudly announced his Ukraine peace plan to the world. There was just one tiny problem. Ukraine wasn't invited to the peace talks about their own country. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Names
then
for
came
Trump,
Colbert
Elon,
with the perfect punchline, comparing it to throwing a birthday party without the birthday person. And Trump absolutely lost it. His reaction tells us everything we need to know about how this man handles criticism and why his approach to world peace is downright dangerous. This has always blown my mind a little bit. 91% that watch this show regularly haven't subscribed. Could I ask you for a small favor before we start? If you like this show, what we do here, and want to support us, the free simple way you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. Ever wonder what kind of genius plans peace talks for a country without inviting that country? Well, our favorite orange president just showed us how it's done. Last week, Trump decided to send Marco Rubio on a diplomatic mission to Saudi Arabia for what he called Russia-Ukraine peace talks. Sounds impressive, right? Only one tiny problem. Ukraine wasn't invited. That's like planning someone's birthday party, but forgetting to tell the birthday boy, hey, we're planning your future, but we don't actually need you there. This wasn't just some scheduling mix-up. Trump's team straight up admitted that Ukraine would need to make major concessions to Russia. When reporters asked what Putin might have to give up in return, Trump went all mysterious and vague. Maybe Russia will give up a lot, maybe they won't. Wow, what a masterclass in negotiation there. It's like selling your house but telling the buyer, maybe you'll pay me, maybe you won't. Surprise me.
Whoops-a-pandemic. Thankfully, we all know that Donald Trump is a steady hand in a public health crisis. I tell you what, folks, have we tried deep frying the birds in bleach, baby? Hear me out. Speaking of chicken, up in Washington, our government is getting spatchcocked by Elon Musk and his post-pubescent pink-slip troopers. Example of these workers head spinning. Frying the birds in bleach, baby. Friday before last, at the Small Business Administration, employees received emails by Elon notifying them of their terminations. Then on Monday, another email said the initial notices were a mistake.
Stephen Colbert, who never misses a chance to call out absurdity, jumped on this diplomatic disaster faster than Trump jumps on a bucket of KFC. On his show, Colbert compared it to planning a surprise party and forgetting the birthday boy. He didn't stop there, adding with perfect comedic timing. That makes it kind of hard to find peace, honey, in a voice that sounded like someone explaining why couples therapy failed miserably. The whole situation reveals Trump's bizarre approach to foreign policy. It's like he's playing international diplomacy on easy mode, where you can just ignore the main characters. But the real kicker was Trump's explanation for why Ukraine wasn't included. Instead of admitting he messed up, he actually blamed Ukraine for starting the war that Russia began. He told reporters with a straight face, "You should have ended it 3 years ago. You should have never started it." Wait, what? Is this the same Russia that rolled tanks across the border into Ukraine? The same Russia that has been occupying Ukrainian territory? In Trump's upside-down world, apparently the country getting invaded is somehow responsible for starting the war. That's like blaming someone for getting punched in the face because their face got in the way of someone's fist. The sheer audacity of planning peace talks for a country while excluding that same country shows just how disconnected Trump is from reality. It's diplomatic malpractice at its finest. Most international relations experts agree that any legitimate peace process must include all relevant parties, especially the country whose territory is actually being fought over. What makes this even more ridiculous is that Trump seems to think he's some kind of master negotiator. Remember when he claimed he could solve Middle East peace in 2 weeks? Now he can't even organize talks properly. It's like watching someone claim they're a world-class chef and then burning cereal. The worst part of this whole fiasco isn't just the diplomatic blunder, it's what it reveals about Trump's worldview. He seems more interested in cozying up to Putin than supporting a democratic ally under attack. When a leader can't even recognize who the aggressor is in a conflict, how can anyone trust their judgment on anything? When you thought Trump's grasp on reality couldn't get any looser, he's now giving us history lessons straight from his own personal fantasy novel. The man who can't even recognize the aggressor in a conflict has graduated to mixing Middle-earth with Russian propaganda, creating a bizarre worldview that would make even J.R.R. Tolkien do a double take. You know your foreign policy is in trouble when your international relations theory includes fictional characters from Lord of the Rings. At a recent rally, Trump somehow managed to compare blaming Ukraine for Russia's invasion to blaming those wicked hobbits for stealing that ring from Sauron. Because nothing says I understand geopolitics like referencing evil jewelry-obsessed eyeballs from fantasy literature. But wait, it gets weirder. Trump didn't just mention Sauron in passing. He actually described the Dark Lord of Mordor as a very good friend of mine, big guy, came up to me once, big strong guy, tears in his flaming eye. That's right, folks. Trump is now claiming personal friendship with fictional villains. What's next? Will he tell us that Voldemort was treated very unfairly by the fake news wizarding media? When he's not busy making friends with evil overlords from Middle-earth, Trump spends his time belittling actual world leaders. He referred to Ukrainian President Zelensky as just a modestly successful comedian who somehow tricked America into spending $350 billion. It's the classic Trump move. When you can't attack someone's policies, attack their previous career. Coming from a reality TV host who bankrupted multiple casinos, that's rich. Trump's love affair with Putin continues to burn bright as ever. In another speech, he praised the Russian dictator as being very popular in Russia with a 90% approval rating. Gee, I wonder why Putin's approval ratings are so high. Could it possibly have anything to do with critics mysteriously falling from windows or journalists disappearing? Trump conveniently forgets that opposing Putin often leads to suddenly developing a case of radioactive poisoning. If Trump's alternative history class wasn't bizarre enough, he doubled down by declaring Russia basically invincible because they beat Hitler, they beat Napoleon. Apparently, Trump's historical knowledge extends just far enough to be dangerous. Someone should probably tell him that Russia had massive help beating Hitler from countries like, the United States, and that they were actually the Soviet Union at the time. No wonder Colbert couldn't resist mocking Trump's strange fixation on Putin, sarcastically asking his audience, who needs Ukraine at peace talks about Ukraine, right? That's just crazy talk. It's like planning a wedding, but telling the bride her opinion on the ceremony doesn't matter. Experts haven't held back in their assessment of Trump's comments either, calling them factually incorrect and misleading, and demonstrating a complete lack of understanding of the conflict. But who needs facts when you've got fictional villains vouching for you? If you thought fictional villains vouching for Trump's bizarre worldview was strange, wait until you see what happens when a real comedian dares to call our former president boring. It's the kind of mild criticism that would roll off most politicians' backs. But for Trump, it was enough to trigger a middle-of-the-night social media meltdown. So what exactly sent Trump into a caps lock frenzy? During a PBS interview, Stephen Colbert made what seems like the tamest comment possible about the former president. When asked if Trump would be invited back on The Late Show, Colbert simply replied, "I have had him before, and he was kind of boring, so no." That's it. No insults about his hair, no mockery of his policies, just calling him boring. But that tiny prick to Trump's ego was enough to burst the dam of presidential dignity. At what must have been the wee hours of the morning, Trump furiously typed out a Truth Social rant calling Colbert a complete and total loser who is not funny, which he gets paid far too much to be. The comedy critic-in-chief didn't stop there. He unleashed his full TV executive fantasy, hammering the caps lock key to declare Colbert very boring, while insisting his show is dying from a complete lack of viewers. It's worth noting that in reality land, where facts still occasionally matter, Colbert's show consistently beats Fox's Gutfeld in ratings. But who needs pesky ratings when you have presidential feelings to protect? Trump's solution to the Colbert problem, he demanded that CBS should immediately terminate his contract and replace him with literally anyone they could find wandering outside the studio. In Trump's own words, CBS should pick almost anyone right off the street who would do better and for far less money. But wait, it gets better. The former leader of the free world even generously offered to recommend someone much more talented and smarter who would do it for free. Imagine that job interview. So what are your qualifications for hosting The Late Show? Well, Donald Trump thinks I'm smart and I work for free. This wasn't just a one-off tantrum aimed at Colbert. The night before, Trump had already taken swings at Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, but his most bizarre demand was calling for the return of Johnny Carson, apparently unaware or unconcerned that Carson passed away in 2005. Nothing says presidential material quite like demanding network executives resurrect the dead to host late-night television. The whole episode reveals something telling about Trump's priorities. When confronted with international crises, Trump seems casual and uninterested, but when a comedian calls him boring, suddenly it's a national emergency requiring immediate action at 3 a.m. You almost have to admire the commitment. Most people, after serving as President of the United States, might develop a thicker skin about what talk show hosts say about them, not Trump. He remains as sensitive as a sunburned toddler. Every mild critique warrants a nuclear response. That sunburned toddler sensitivity isn't just reserved for comedy show critiques. It's now spilling over into full-blown rally weirdness that has even loyal supporters exchanging worried glances. The same man who throws midnight tantrums over late-night TV jokes is also the one trying to negotiate peace deals for countries he can't even locate on a map. And if you thought his diplomatic disasters were concerning, wait until you see what happened at his recent rally in Georgia. While standing in Savannah, Trump's behavior went from merely strange to genuinely bewildering. He bounced between topics faster than a squirrel on energy drinks, leaving audience members struggling to follow his train of thought, assuming there was one. At one point, he paused to wipe what appeared to be drool from his lip while making the wild claim that California experiences blackouts every 10 seconds that prevent residents from using their air conditioning. Anyone who's visited California recently might wonder which alternate universe Trump has been visiting. But the real highlight came when Trump couldn't locate a chart he wanted to show the crowd. Instead of moving on like a normal person would, he pretended to hug and kiss an imaginary floating chart, telling his supporters with full seriousness, "I sleep with that chart every night, I kiss it." This wasn't just your standard political theater. This was something that might have medical professionals raising their eyebrows. The confusion only deepened when Trump accidentally boasted about giving Americans the biggest tax hikes in the history of our country. He meant tax cuts, of course, but the slip didn't seem to register with him or many in the crowd. Geography isn't his strong suit either. He referred to Charlottesville, Virginia as Charlottetown, while lurching over the podium and pointing to his head, claiming, "It is not muscle, it is all right there." What exactly it was remains unclear to everyone, possibly including Trump himself. The cherry on top of this confusion Sunday, after wrapping up his Georgia rally, Trump proudly posted a great day in Louisiana on Truth Social. That's right, the former president of the United States, the man who wants to return to the Oval Office and handle complex global crises, couldn't remember which state he was in. It's like showing up to work and forgetting which company employs you. When you connect these moments to his bizarre approach to international diplomacy, things start making more sense, in a deeply concerning way. The man who can't distinguish Georgia from Louisiana is the same one crafting peace plans that exclude the actual invaded country. The person who kisses imaginary charts is determining which nations deserve a seat at the negotiating table. The politician who brags about tax hikes when he means cuts is deciding the economic future of war-torn regions. It's no longer just about bad policy or disagreeable politics. These increasingly confused performances suggest something more fundamental might be happening. When a presidential candidate can't keep basic facts straight, confuses states, makes inappropriate gestures, and seems generally disoriented, the diplomatic failures we're witnessing might stem from cognitive issues rather than just flawed strategy. So here's the thing, when you look at Trump's furious midnight rant about Colbert, you're seeing a man who unravels at being called boring, yet casually excludes an entire nation from talks about their own existence. His Truth Social meltdown, where he labeled Colbert a complete and total loser, speaks volumes about what really triggers him. Not war crimes, not humanitarian crises, but a comedian poking fun at his ego. This fragile temperament raises serious questions about his fitness for leadership. Can someone who melts down over late-night comedy be trusted with nuclear codes? The pattern is crystal clear. Whether planning half-baked peace talks or raging about TV hosts in the wee hours, Trump's first priority is always his ego, not solving actual problems. Turns out the real boring thing might be his inability to focus on anything beyond himself.